welcome to this masterclass brought to you by The Banker magazine. My name is Michelle Price. I'm business editor of The Banker, and I'm joined here today by Senthil Kumar, who is the Vice President of Global Financial Services Marketing at Oracle. And today we are talking about banking for Generation Y. Now, for those of you who have no idea who or what Generation Y is, never fear, as Senthil is going to explain all. Senthil, tell me, for those uninitiated individuals in the audience, can you explain to me a little bit about who and what is Generation Y?
Broadly, Generation Y shares the same experience of the digital world. They can be classified as people who've been after the 80s. They've been born in a period where Usenets and bulletin boards were very predominant. And they also share an experience which is very close to the digital natives. And this also includes some of them who have tracked the progress in the digital world and have become immigrants into the digital world and use an extensive technology in their everyday life. So Gen Y shares not by age, not by geography, not by caste or creed that they come together, but it's more like a phenomenon that they share a very similar experience, and they could be across anywhere in the world.
Okay, so you just used two phrases there, digital natives and digital immigrants. So just to recap, a digital native is someone who is born into that kind of familiar experience with lightweight consumer technology tools, and they conceive the world differently from digital immigrants who might be, I suppose, my mother, for example, who has learnt and adapted to technology but hasn't been born into that. Is that a fair characterization of the differences, or is it more nuanced than that?
There is one more nuance into the digital world, is the people who wander around, who are like probably my mother and your mother, who probably get in just for knowing what it is and maybe use it for a specific purpose or assistance. But digital immigrants are those who are completely embraced with what is happening in the digital world, and they kind of converted themselves. But the digital natives are those who probably between, I would say, between the 15, they are between 15 and 30 years of age, and they kind of use it as a way of life rather than using it. But even said that, I think there is a category of people in their 40s or the 50s who have very close or very similar experience as the digital natives, and they are also growing, and that is why you see a number of transactions that are now supported for those profiles of ages in the digital world.
So let me ask you, in terms of geographical distribution, is this a phenomenon we find in all parts of the world, or is it more predominant in Western Europe and the US?
This is one phenomenon that is in all parts of the world, distributed well. I think the enabling technology has been the mobile and the internet. So it is not just limited to the Western world. The adoption is much more higher outside the Western world than in the Western world.
Okay, so let's move this into the banking industry. What is the significance for banks and their profitability? I mean, what is the real potential of this particular generation of consumers for the banks?
The this generation is fairly empowered. They have the ability to assimilate information independent of being guided into the service. They kind of assimilate the information through the various sources that they use every day. And they're also kind of empowered in terms of making their own choices. And they're fairly close to many brands. So they are kind of brand aware when they walk in and do certain things. That doesn't mean they are loyal to any brand, but they're very picky about a brand. So in that context, if you really look at what banks or financial services organization needs to leverage is to get them early, have a conversation, and keep the conversation going and keep them engaged for them to choose their products as they go into this. It also doesn't mean that they will choose Bank A or Bank B for a particular service. There could be a Bank C that they may choose in their life cycle. But a brand association with something that they're familiar will definitely help.
Okay, well, that customer loyalty issue is key, and we'll probably move on to that in a little bit. Let me ask you, in terms of how we conceive of traditional high street banking, I still think of it as being probably a little bit clunky. I think some banks probably haven't quite embraced sort of the lightweight consumer so-called Web 2.0 tools. So how does what the Y generation sort of expects and the experiences that they are familiar with, how does that fit or not fit, as it were, with the traditional sort of high street banking experience?
The high street banking experience is kind of channelized to a set of channels that is predominantly it doesn't give the uniform experience across all the channels as we see today in the banking industry. And there are very few banks now have stepped up to be channel agnostic to any customer. I think that is the foundation for addressing this generation, that you need to be delivering those services in a manner that it is not that only in a particular channel you get that experience, but it's the same experience or similar experience across all the channels. And they also fairly adaptive of the new channels. So it's far more easier to push something down and get that adoption rate higher by using that channel rather than trying to build that service and draw in an existing channel and trying to draw that audience in.